All right. I guess we could start. Thank you guys so much for joining. My name's Linda. Um, I work at Mask Network and also Next ID. And we kind of host these spaces to we bring projects on to talk about different projects and the current state of the market. So right now today we're going to be talking about DeFi exchanges and kind of where we stand in this space. So Bradley and Jared and Muckle, if you guys can all do a quick introduction on who you are and also an introduction on Gearbox, that would be awesome.
Brad, if you want to go first, happy to defer to you. But
Sure. So my name is Brad Nickel. I'm a host of two DeFi-oriented shows, DeFi Lunch and Mission DeFi, which you can find both shows at missiondefi.com. Been in tech and startups for since the dot-com days, so I'm older than most everybody in the space. But my background is a lot of tech and startups, and I also am owner in a trading tools company called Material Indicators.
Muggle, why don't you go next?
Yep. Hey, hi guys, I'm Muggles and largely look after the marketing bit. I mean, contribute to the marketing bit for Gearbox and a little bit towards the operation side. Before this, I have headed brands like Quaker and Lay's. So that's largely it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I am Jared at Gearbox. I am working on operations, business development, strategy. Wearing a bunch of hats. Been at Gearbox for about 8-9 months now. Before Gearbox, I was at BitGo, where I was leading the institutional platform sales in the Americas, as well as leading the MetaMask institutional integration and working with institutions on how they were going to use a qualified custodian or at least a hot wallet with extra permissions to interact with DeFi. So was there for a year and a half. Before that, Coinbase institutional sales, custody and OTC trading, and before that, started my crypto journey at a company called Alpha Point that launches white label crypto exchanges all around the world. So yeah, been in the space for about 5 years and had been shitcoin trading for about a year or two before that. And Gearbox, sorry, Linda, is that, yeah. Gearbox, we are building something that I think is incredibly applicable to the conversations that are being had today and around these most recent events. But Gearbox itself is a two-sided generalized leverage protocol. And what we mean by generalized is composable and the ability to interact with multiple different protocols, all in kind of the same series of transactions. So on the supply side, on the left side, you have passive liquidity providers that supply their assets into pools for borrowers, and they earn an APY that is not really liquidatable. Then on the borrow side, on the demand side, we have these leverage seekers and active borrowers, and they can actually draw up to 10x leverage in a fully decentralized way. They borrow those funds from the pools, and all of those funds go into what we call a credit account. And we feel that this credit account is a new type of a primitive. It is basically like a decentralized prime brokerage account that can allow that leverage to be deployed to third-party protocols like leverage yield farming or leverage just trading on Uniswap or SushiSwap, building delta-neutral strategies, and potentially more complex future kind of on-chain derivatives. So we're not necessarily a derivatives platform. This is all spot, but it is also at all times fully collateralized. So yeah, Gearbox is looking to become a decentralized leverage layer for Ethereum, and we'll see where we go next.
Awesome. And do you have anything exciting coming up for Gearbox that we should know about?
Well, we just launched our V2, and so V1 had integrations with Uniswap, SushiSwap, and Yearn. our V2 that launched just a couple weeks ago. One on the passive side does have a liquidity mining program, so you can passively earn those natural rates in whatever you deposit along with gear tokens, which I will caveat are not fully transferable right now, so they are not trading. And then they are, just used as a governance token to vote on what the protocol and DAO is actually doing. Then on the borrowing side, V2 launch included Curve, Convex, and Lido strategies, as well as an innovation that our founder and CTO modeled after the Maker multi-call. And so multi-call is an incredibly efficient way to deploy complex farming or trading strategies without needing to interact with multiple UIs. So we can dig into that a little bit more. But yeah, we just launched, went from 9 million in TVL to about 130 with an additional 80 of that borrowed in just the past 2 weeks. So yeah, it's been a ride amidst the kind of mayhem of the markets that we've seen over the past few days.
Yeah, sounds like you guys are booming. So I wanted to just kind of get writing and talk about the current events and what's happening in this space. Brad, did you want to say something?
Nothing in particular. Go ahead.
Okay. So I have a few questions, and I first wanted to start by asking, um, did you guys expect something like this? And like what was your reaction when you initially saw CZ's announcement on selling all his tokens on of FTT?
Yeah, I mean, my response to CZ's doing that was that it was a smart business move, just from the perspective of they had already been burned with Luna. I think it was a multi-$100 million investment that was worth about it's worth about $3,000 now, and they didn't sell in time. So, it just makes smart business sense to do it. Now, the question, he's denying that he did the announcement of it to cause problems for FTX. Some people say it was a savvy business move to take out a competitor. Other people are saying that he just wanted to notify the community that, he was going to be selling this. Obviously, I think there's probably a bit of business strategy here because he could have just done a quiet OTC deal, but he was responding to the fact that the tokens were moving on chain onto the exchange from a wallet. So I wasn't as surprised about CZ's move as I obviously, just like everyone else, am pretty shocked at the extent of the mess over at FTX and Alameda. That said, I don't know if everybody's aware or not, but Sam put out a thread this morning, about a half hour ago, apologizing and stating that they have enough value in the company to cover all user deposits. But he definitely did a mea culpa, and his personal attorneys are probably freaking out because he basically takes full responsibility for the harm caused. So anyway, that's an interesting update on it.
Yeah, fascinating times. Would not say was expecting any of this at all. What I would say is, having gone to a couple of crypto conferences over the past few months, it has felt like there was going to be more blood. Now, having it play out the way it has was completely unexpected, in my opinion. And frankly, when the rumors started coming out last week, I was shocked that people were even questioning the liquidity and solvency of FTX. So, but things change in terms of CZ fully making that announcement. I don't know his true intentions, but I do appreciate the transparency that he's providing to not only his investors and his community. And frankly, if someone says, CZ is about to sell as much FTT as, a small sovereign country's worth, then they might say, I am selling mine too, and appreciate the ability to exit before that. So it's a complicated situation. It's a complicated question. But yeah, I don't know how many people can truthfully say they were fully expecting the fallout that's happened.
Yeah, and
Jared,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, and
Sorry.
I think that also part of CZ's response, as he said in one of his tweets, was the fact that essentially, Sam had been for weeks or months basically trying to position FTX and centralized exchanges as superior to DeFi in the United States legislative process, and was basically out there harming DeFi's position from a regulatory perspective, and just felt like that couldn't be tolerated. And so I think that was part of it as well. And at the end of the day, even if CZ did every step he did, trading industry is a cutthroat business. Every trade, there's a winner and a loser, or theoretically, there's a winner and a loser. And for anyone to think that, someone who has gotten to the point where CZ has, and not expect him to try to take out the number two competitor to him, that's just business. That's how it functions.
Yep. I think that's like one part of it, but what I was actually extremely shocked by was like the accusation that, FTX was gambling with user funds. That's like the initial hint that CZ gave. That's what like had me completely shook because I mean to be of that scale and to do something like that which is just so obviously illegal and that does jeopardize each and every user on the platform. That's what I thought that's just not possible. I thought it's not really gonna happen, but I think we all saw what actually unfolded and uh, kind of made me believe in DeFi even more. Like, owning what you actually have and the kind of proposition that DeFi offers in terms of you being able to own your own position, which is not something the CEX does. So while you can own coins anywhere, you can put them in ledger. DeFi does enable you to kind of hold that position as well, which is a pretty crucial thing.
Yeah, and Brad, to touch on your point about Sam's thread this morning, it was interesting to see what he did touch on and what he didn't, right? He said the exchange has the value to cover these withdrawals, but it's obviously not liquid enough to cover them, but he does not really explain why, right?
Right.
And
What's that? Where's that value coming from?
right, exactly. And if a exchange is running properly, again, I worked at Coinbase, I worked at BitGo that supported a ton of exchanges in the back end. There should be 100% solvency of client funds, whether it's in cold or hot storage.
Yep.
So the client funds are different, but if there's a hole in the balance sheet, then he's not explaining that, and I'm sure that is a piece that his personal attorney said, no way in hell are you putting this in the thread. But yeah, as Muggle also shared, that is the value prop of DeFi and the protocol that I wish I were building. I'm not a gigabrain like some of the contributor engineers that are working on this, but this is at least the hope to build this sort of transparent future with an open market.
Yeah, and I think what Muggle said is absolutely spot on, and it really made me start thinking of the last couple of days about how we as an industry have been facing regulatory pressure, right? This is the kind of thing that happens in traditional finance because it's opaque. Despite regulations, despite disclosure requirements, these are the kinds of things from 2008 to any other kind of crisis or fraud that's occurred in the stock market or anywhere else in mortgages, whatever. The value proposition of DeFi is transparency, right? And decentralization. And I think we have totally missed the boat on how we push from a regulatory perspective and talk to politicians. We're always trying to convince them of better money and don't touch us, don't regulate us, trying to build a firewall. When in fact, if you think about this, this is a perfect example of everything that's wrong with the way the current financial system functions. And that is that we provide a superior method for protecting consumers and markets, because what we do is transparent. And to me, what I hope comes out of this is that we use this as an example of why DeFi is so important, and we start actually switching the narrative to one of the entire financial system should be decentralized, on chain, and transparent. Imagine how many people would not have been impacted if the books had been open in 2008 and we had known how bad things really were, before it was too late. So I'm hoping that's one of the lessons we learn out of this.
I could not agree more. I think, in 2008, that's what started the Bitcoin revolution and led us to having multiple different layer ones that can actually do more complex computations on chain and make this stuff transparent. And drawing back to, Brad, what you said before as well, Sam was out there parading around talking about the DCCPA and how crypto should be regulated, while he was, again, speculatively doing exactly the opposite of that behind the scenes. So in my opinion, it's a massive slap in the face to the community and the builders, because now we're seeing those secondary knock-on effects on chain where these kind of innocent players are needing to be liquidated because there's not enough liquidity to actually cover the system. So I do think regulators need to start having conversations and start actually trying to understand what these systems do, as opposed to just trying to grab a power control over them. Especially, I think, the US is trying to regulate an internet native protocol. And so if they say we have a duty to protect our citizens, then maybe start with just saying, okay, you need to disallow VPNs or something along those lines, to say, okay, like, we're not allowing US users, but we are not in your jurisdiction. But another fact that I learned at DeFiCon was that all of these senators and representatives can't actually own any crypto assets. And so how they are expected to regulate a brand new type of asset that they don't understand blows my mind. Because when someone new asks me, tell me a little bit more about Gearbox, or tell me a little bit about a lending market like Aave or Compound, I say the easiest way to start understanding it is just to use it. You see the transparency. You can check Etherscan and see all of these transactions happening on chain. So I think it needs to be a stepwise function of regulation and conversations before people just say, you get a subpoena and you get a subpoena and you get a subpoena.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you guys. Yeah, I agree. I feel like the ethos of this whole industry is to be able to have transparency, especially when it comes to user funds. So what do you guys, how do we move on from here, or um, what do you see for crypto in the near future with all this chaos that's currently happening?
Well, I mean, I think we have a lot of doom and gloom. You've got, people saying it's going to be years before institutional or TradFi comes back in. And frankly, I'd like them to get some education about what decentralization is before they do anyway. But, at the end of the day, if there's money to be made, if there's greed to be satisfied, it won't take long for everybody to pile back in, right? And if people get from what is occurring that a centralized exchange is opaque and you can't see what you have, whereas DeFi is not, and it's transparent, then I think we'll have even a better time of bringing people into it. I mean, will we be, in a year back to where we were in November? Probably not. But I do think that when there's money to be made, the Fed turns back around on the measures they're doing, and people start piling back in, that we'll have a boost again. There'll be money in people's pockets, and people are going to be looking for a place to make more money with their money. And so, frankly, I think the best game in town for that is DeFi, and it's just up to us to make sure people know.
Yeah, I think very honestly, there are two sides to it. I mean, one is obviously the token prices side, which, to be honest, for me, does not represent DeFi. Very honestly, I think uh, we say that uh, how fundamentally strong a token is should dictate the price, but that's not always given the case because there are multiple other factors. From the other side, that we should look at it is how the system is now being built out. So, as far as I'm looking out, if you look at the kind of projects that are being carried out in DeFi today, I don't think this is stopping them unless there's a direct risk towards the treasury, which is going to be a sad part. So I'm sure that there's going to be some hit, but in terms of builders stopping building because of this, I don't see that happening. So yeah, maybe the people will come back slightly later than they would have otherwise because there is reputational and risk related damages that have happened. But in terms of DeFi, I think builders are at it. They are trying to create a better UX. They're trying to create better protocols. They're trying to innovate a little more. And the good part is the kind of market we're coming out of. A lot of the group protocols have enough runway to kind of function for the next 2 to 3 years. So the kind of building that's going to take place, I'm extremely bullish on that, to be very honest. And I do think once people come back, we then have that chance to capture that market, even from a DeFi point of view of users.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's go for it, Brad.
No, go ahead, man. Sorry.
No, it's all good. I feel like it's going to be broken down into two avenues. On the broader sense, one is the kind of centralized way things go about, and again, back to regulation and how regulators start addressing what's just happened. And you already see, the SEC is saying, "Oh, we've already been investigating a few months ago." It's like, all right, cool, thanks for protecting us. But then you talk about DeFi and Muggle, just what you said, it's building. There's nothing that has happened is going to prevent Gearbox contributors from trying to build new cool integrations that can provide more composable value. And this is a system unlike a credit score or unlike a fully uncollateralized loan where you can actually build stuff that is so transparent that this, like, unless there's mass issues or hacks, the funds will always be there and always be solvent. So build is the way I see it on the DeFi side. I don't see anything stopping all of these protocols, whatever chain you're on, from building cool stuff. But will price be hit and be affected for some amount of time? Most likely this is another black swan, kind of two black swans in the same year. So it's just something we'll have to overcome as a group.
And not just that, I think like we are talking about the near and the middle term over here in terms of just the development part, but the kind of effect this is going to have towards the users when these people do come back, when they do see that value again. I think the part of trustlessness, which very honestly was the reason why I entered this industry, that's going to speak out a lot more than it ever has. Right. So I think there are going to be certain users who are now going to prefer decentralized projects a lot more than a centralized one because they know that despite having those smart contract risks and whatever, at least they don't have to trust a third party that they know nothing about. They know where the funds are, where everything is. So I think I don't think it's amazing for the space, but in terms of development, I don't think it stops that.
Yeah, and I completely agree with both you on the building side of things. The founders I interview on Mission DeFi, I often ask them, did you come in as a mercenary or a missionary, and what are you now? And most of the high quality protocols and people that I interact with in this space are missionaries that are here to build decentralized, transparent finance and want on a mission to change the world. I went to the Permissionless conference the week after the Terra Luna mess really hit hard, and expected to see like this just completely depressed, down. I expected a miserable week, and what was amazing was the people that were there were the people that were hardcore about building, and they were making deals and they were integrating and they were partnering and they were talking about what they're building. And to me, that was a real boost. I was like, wow, if we can come out of this with that level of excitement about actually continuing to build, it's a great thing. I also think these things clean out the mercenaries, right? It allows us to get rid of folks who aren't building for the mission. They're building, to make a buck. And don't get me wrong, the missionaries want to make money too, and everyone understands this is a financial platform, or that DeFi is financial. But there's a lot of folks now who are even more determined, based on these events occurring, and the founders I've talked to this week, after the FTX debacle, are all even more determined. It gives them more reason to keep building, keep innovating, keep partnering, keep integrating, and growing.
Yeah, and I agree. And what I would also just add on top is, when I was at BitGo working with the MetaMask institutional team, there was very real interest from very real large institutions to start interacting with DeFi. I left BitGo in February or March, so this is now a lifetime ago in the crypto years, but those players are there. And if they're mercenary, fine, they can sit on the sidelines soon and watch and wait and see what they like and what they don't. But it does, in my opinion, feel like the tide is changing, and we are at that sort of Lindy point for DeFi soon. It's just about the obfuscation of complex transactions. And again, to keep shilling Gearbox, what multi-call does, and the ability to allow you to take out debt. Let's say you put USDC down as your collateral, you borrow more USDC, you put those funds into Curve, take the Curve LP tokens and put them into Convex without actually needing to visit all of these UIs and make sure that you're approving these transactions and confirming these transactions in gas inefficient ways. This is the sort of innovation that goes from 0 to 1, in my opinion, of then having a button for RIAs to be able to deploy delta neutral strategies in a seamless way, or to highlight an integration that's going live. I think it went live yesterday, is Brahma. They make automated vaults that hedge the same leverage that uses Gearbox in their own vault. So they have complex strategies that will eventually have end users saying, oh, I don't even realize I'm using DeFi. I don't even realize I'm doing super complex transactions on chain. I'm just able to easily move money around in different strategies that hasn't quite been possible before.
That's great, because I was just going to ask, how do we, after all this mess, how do we onboard more people, especially people who don't really want to learn about the technology of DeFi, into the space? And I guess being able to use a tool like Gearbox, where things are very seamless, helps in that.
Yeah. Sorry,
And
Brad,
were you guys impacted in any way by this?
So we were not impacted. Okay, so just to zoom out, Gearbox is run by a DAO, and so the DAO has a certain number of contributors that are both on the risk team, and so there's kind of internal risk scoring. We also externally coordinate and employ risk DAO, and they build dashboards and check basically the health of whether it be the credit accounts that are borrowed, the collateral that is in the pools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so was the protocol impacted? No, we did not have FTT as collateral. We're on Ethereum, so we don't have any kind of access to Solana. What has changed is we've seen the market dump pretty significantly, and there were, I think, 2 additional liquidations. So in the week plus that we've launched, we've had 3 total liquidations. We do not plan to be a predatory liquidation platform. Again, I'm me speaking idealistically. Maybe other DAO members think differently, but I do not want this to be a platform that is just trying to poach liquidations. This should be a long-term, stability, farming and trading venue. So there were 3 liquidations, and those were due to Oracle discrepancies. And so one Oracle updates faster than another Oracle that should be pegged in theory. So a few people that had leverage right up to the max that is kind of safe did get liquidated as that volatility happened and occurred. So what I'd add to that is yesterday our engineering contributors have already proposed a fix to the system. And so that is being discussed and will be voted on immediately. So, it hasn't had these sort of cascading knock-on effects that you might see in a centralized exchange where the collateral is not transparent, or you don't have a fully decentralized and known risk team building these parameters for users. And on one hand, you say, well, why did liquidations happen in the first place? You should maybe build a platform that is within parameters that doesn't allow liquidations. And that could be a fair argument. But what I'd also say is we are allowing users to build these positions and control them themselves. So if they get a little too close to liquidation, that is unfortunately on them. So, we don't want to be the babysitters. We're just building a really amazing system that some of the most amazing traders could probably build automated systems to push it right up to that leverage limit. But, unfortunately, the system is still young, and we're trying to iron out all the little details.
I read that
Yep.
thread about those liquidations, and it was fascinating, the different variables from Chainlink on those prices. I actually talked about it on our show this week, and because there was nothing you guys could actually do about that. It was the nature of the way Chainlink decided the pricing data would be fed, and I think that really speaks to part of the kind of decentralization issues that we're evolving, right? Nothing is pure
Yeah.
yet to that point. Human beings are still making decisions in some cases because we haven't advanced far enough to make that completely automated thing. But it's really cool to hear you guys that the devs there have figured out a way
So
to handle it.
So I would like to add one thing on top of that. In terms of the Chainlink oracles, how this thing works is, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong because I'm not a dev, but this is my larger understanding. And that is that every time you're supposed to feed in a price, there's a cost associated with it. I mean, in terms of gas and other things. What I see it as is a flaw at the moment in all of DeFi that over time and with scale will automatically get out, right? I mean, as usage increases, as we have more people, as we have revenue increasing, protocols will be able to spend more in order to make sure that these oracles are able to afford a lower time deviation for the update on the oracle price tick, right? And as and when that happens, we will see issues like this propping up even less and less. If we are able to update this thing every half a second instead of like every 30 seconds or every 1 minute like we do right now, because we have more usage and we have more money in all of DeFi, I think it kind of like irons itself out. So yeah, in terms of the automation, the one side is price getting to it, but the other side is also towards the price point. So I don't see it as like something that will hinder DeFi for a longer time, but for a smaller time. And on the same bit, we have actually just updated the Oracle for STETH to direct ETH, which means we do not have to require 2 Oracle updates. So the time deviation between the two won't affect liquidations anymore.
Yeah, well said, Muggle. And Brett, I appreciate you recognizing that this was unfortunately, not unfortunately, we're happy that it was not a Gearbox flaw, but this just is how DeFi works right now, right? We're not in a centralized exchange where a massive market maker is going to make sure that the wrapped or the staked Ethereum price is in exact peg with the Ethereum price, or as close as they feel is the right price within milliseconds. So that is maybe one issue that we can say is inherent in a system that doesn't have immediate finality. But what I will also say is we are also seeing other teams build tools to combat this, right? We've already discussed sort of the Brahma strategy. There are other protocols like Mello that are building a system where you can have a little extra collateral so that if your health factor gets too close to being liquidated, it tops up or potentially just closes your position so you don't lose that collateral. There are a ton of other systems, whether it be Gelato, whether it be EPNS, where you can have active traders that get just an update or a ping that says your health factor is getting too close to a liquidatable level. So if you're on this call and you're like, I want to build cool, transparent stuff, there are so many tools that can be built using this system. And again, with the multi-call, it makes it so much more efficient. And to highlight one other strategy, we saw at ETH Amsterdam a group build a really cool trading strategy that would be automated using multi-call, where if the price action went over, let's say, a 50-day moving average, then it would.
Oh, I think we lost you.
Call me.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we can
I'm
hear you
here.
now.
Yeah, my dad was trying to call. Sorry about that. Yeah, so this strategy that hackers built in a hackathon was going long when it went over the moving average, and then when it went back under, then they would basically programmatically switch to a stablecoin farming strategy so they didn't lose any additional assets. So there can be some amazing stuff built with this system. At the same time, we want more people to come in and join the DAO and start building with us. So some of these deficiencies will be addressed over time, is I guess the kind of long point I was trying to make there.
All right, I just want to announce that we will be giving prizes on this space. So later on, we'll open this up for anyone who has questions. And we're going to be giving, I believe, $100 in mask to the best 3 questions. So my follow-up question is, I think we've kind of concluded that DeFi is the future. But is there a future for CeFi?
Well, I think the future right now is CZs to have. All of the major exchanges announced they're going to do on-chain proof of reserves this week. I often tell people that until they started moving into doing more in DeFi, that Coinbase is destined to be an on and off ramp for DeFi. And as banks start buying and selling, offering buying and selling crypto, this is in the US, excuse my US centric approach here, but I think it'll happen worldwide. As banks start to offer crypto, then centralized exchanges become less and less relevant for people that are participating in DeFi. I think there will always be people who are traders primarily, who will prefer to trade on centralized exchanges, and they will still do that. And if they feel like they can trust the centralized exchange to have the reserves to back it and not go insolvent and have smart business practices, then I think there will probably always be a place for that. So
Definitely. What I love about this question is how closely I was working on this before I joined a full DAO and DeFi project. And so there are so many custodians, exchanges, qualified custodians that are building integrations with DeFi directly from their home. So obviously the classic saying, not your keys, not your coins, but institutions, if you're a SEC qualified fund in the US, you need to hold your funds at a qualified custodian. And those are just the rules, right? So, excuse me, if a SEC institution says they really want to get involved with DeFi, they can ideally hold their funds at a Coinbase or at a BitGo or Anchorage, and I'm trying to think of other qualified custodians, but other venues like Fireblocks or Copper or Credo in the future, or Cactus, that will then allow those coins to be in a qualified custodial environment. They are by definition not rehypothecated. They are on chain, but then you can interact out of these cold storage environments in a clean, clear way. So I think that is the new frontier, right? Instead of having, or you might have some sort of a hybrid model where you can have your balance in cold. If you say, I think execution is better on the centralized exchange, or that's, maybe connected through this qualified custodian or prime broker that I'm using, awesome. But if I want to go leverage farm or provide liquidity into strategies in DeFi, and as long as my compliance team says this pool is not too dirty, quote unquote dirty, or whatever that might be for their own risk parameters, then that I think is where we're going to start seeing that institutional CeFi to DeFi adoption, because there's too much interest in this transparency, and I can't see every single player after this incident just saying, oh, I only really want to keep working with centralized exchanges, because clearly that is not that is a risk. That is a risk that you have to face.
So I mostly used to use CeFi because I felt like it was safer. But seeing what happened this past week, the damage of CeFi, if there is a problem, is catastrophic. And with DeFi, I feel like a lot of users are sometimes, I shouldn't say a lot, are vulnerable to hacks. How do we ensure security to users who are using DeFi?
That is a loaded question, Linda. I would say we do the absolute best we can. So again, I'm speaking solely from the Gearbox perspective. With our recent V2 launch, we did 3 audits with super high quality auditing firms, Chain Security, Sigma Prime, and Consensus. Those are not cheap, and
Yeah.
that is a serious commitment to make. On top of that, when we launched V1, there were also 3 additional audits. I believe it was Mixed Bytes, Consensus, and maybe Sigma Prime again. So it is, upon, I believe, the protocols to make sure that the code is as bulletproof as possible. But even, what is it, a year ago, we saw that Compound had just a missing less than or equal to sign instead of a less than sign or something along those lines, and it was a major exploit. So we do the best we can. We partner with, again, firms like RiskDAO. We have our own DAO risk team, continuing to prioritize security and safety is what the goal is, right? We want this to be a system that works. At the same time, you just can't fully guarantee it. And on top of that, working with providers like Nexus Mutual to say, if a major institution wants to deposit, they can actually get insurance on that liquidity provision. So again, I digress. I'll pass it on to Muggle, but I think it's upon the protocols to build these frameworks and prioritize security spends, even though you can't guarantee anything, to be completely honest.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agree with Jared, and majority of my points are very similar as well. I mean, in terms of the safety bit, speaking again just from the Gearbox point of view, since we have set up the treasury, more than half of our expenditures have been on the security bit itself in terms of audits and bounties and everything like that. Actually, closer to 70% probably. To give you an overview of how we are doing it, so I mean, just to look at it in terms of like the risk management protocol part, we have a partnership with RiskDAO. We have an active dashboard where you can, just anybody can access it anytime they want to. and they can see how the protocol, how the entire bit is functioning in terms of different risk parameters, whether or not liquidations are happening on time, how the bad debt is functioning, and things like those, to make sure that the protocol isn't underwater, nobody's money is unsafe. Then comes the security bit. In terms of security, like Jared said, we have already had 3 audits for V2, and we've paid an insane sum of money for that. The kind of money that we have already paid on security, all of the contributors combined throughout the year won't be making that much money. So that's the kind of commitment we have towards that side. On the other hand, we have partnership with Immunify in order to make sure that white hats kind of have that boost initially to work on our code base and test it out completely in order to make sure that it's bug free. And we have doubled our security budget on that to $300,000 for critical bugs. And any other smaller bug that we had, we have doubled our payout on that too as well. And finally, yeah, the insurance bit. I think that's the final part, right? I mean, while the protocol is trying out everything, if we do fail on that, we still have that insurance coverage from Nexus Mutual. You can buy it, and in case, even after all our efforts, we fail, you can get your money back from there.
I totally agree with both of you on your points on this. This is a big giant topic, right? I mean, this extends from everything from understanding and using wallets and wallet safety, UI and UX on protocols, UI and UX and wallets, the difficulties for new users to understand and grasp conceptually what's happening here, to understand how protocols function and work. In the industry as a whole, we are abysmal at creating intuitive, usable working interfaces. And there are some that do a good job, and the rest are kind of a mess. It's all part of our evolution. We have problems with centralized, UIs being hosted on centralized servers, right? So we have DNS attacks. We have the ability to hijack websites and take users' money that way. We have an audit industry that is filled with really great auditors who do the best they can, and really bad auditors who are just trying to make a big buck because the money is so good in the audit industry. We have not advanced enough in our technology utilizing AI and machine learning to recognize common problems and errors in smart contract code to advance the industry and get us there. And that's because auditors are competitive with each other and they're not sharing a lot of information back and forth. So we have decentralization issues. A majority of the infrastructure for a lot of the infrastructure for DeFi is going through centralized providers like Infura, and a lot of them are hosted on AWS. And so we have real risks there with attacks on centralized infrastructure. RPC nodes are combined and held in a few major players, which is how all of us connect our wallets to the system. So we have a lot of work to do. I think an ethos focusing on trying to decentralize as much as possible. We have issues with oracles that maybe aren't as decentralized as they should be yet. There are some competitors in that space that are growing and doing better, but we have a lot of pieces to fix. And so I think from the perspective of onboarding new users into the space, there are a number of things that can be done. There's a non-custodial wallet called Brew Money that's mobile only, and they're in beta, but they're making it one-click simple for users to onboard, transfer funds from their bank account, and then click one button to put a little bit of money in Aave and start earning interest. I think part of what we're going to have to do from a UI perspective for users is either at the wallet level or somewhere else, be able to rate the history of a protocol, how long it's been around, how well it's been audited, how good the auditors were that did the audits. But we're going to have to take users from a beginner stage and move them into the more complex stuff we do, and then be able to communicate and educate them on what is and is not tested and has stood the test of time. So I think we have a ton of work to do. I'm encouraged that everyone is trying to do as much as they can to make it better. But I also think that, again, all of the crises, all the calamities, all of the hacks, all of these things push us to do better and do more, and make us focused on taking care of these things. I say all the time that our transparency is our superpower, because if you look at any given hack that occurs in this space, literally within a half hour to an hour, there are all these incredible big brain coders and experts who are analyzing it, looking at it, trying to find the problem, trying to understand what occurred, and trying to see if this is something that's happening industry wide, so that they can get the word out and let people know about it. You'll see examples of competitors who have helped each other and discovered that, one DEX had a bug and the other DEX needed to fix it, right? So I'm encouraged by what we have done so far, but we are, it's cliche now to say we're early, but we are so friggin' early. It's like, it reminds me of the first time I got on the internet in 1995. The process that you had to go through to get on, we're probably about there in terms of onboarding users and making this simple and safe and understandable.
I love that. And when the chain link discrepancies happened the past week, and it made me think of the dial-up modem sound in connecting to the early days of the internet, because it was just like, oh, this is just not quite as quick as we would like this to be.
Yeah.
But I again totally agree. I feel like we've all been in general agreement here. Decentralization matters. It really matters. But at the root, wallets and private keys and seed phrases matter, and it boils all the way down to that level of detail. And I know one or two wallet stealth startups, and whether it be someone trying to build new MPC wallets for end users that can be built out at a mass scale and have key shards stored in different ways, so that wallet access isn't lost forever. I know, seed phrase custodians that are trying to build and ensure seed phrases and wallets in a decentralized way. So yeah, these core pieces of infrastructure are what is needed to grow in a decentralized, transparent way. But yeah, unfortunately, we are early, even though it feels like we've been here for years. So everything will keep being built and keep being improved. But we need to do that in a safe, secure, and scalable way. So, when Gearbox TVL is at $1 billion one day, it would be amazing. But the fact that we're creeping up in a normal way, and quote unquote normal way in my head, is even more exciting to me.
Yeah, I realize how early we are every day in this space. My other question was, it seems like the go-to option for people to convert their their fiat, it's still through um, a centralized exchange. Is there any gateway you see in the future for someone to convert their stable coins into their bank account, or are able to cash it out?
Yeah, I feel like that happened last week with MasterCard, pretty much. I thought they announced the ability to trade directly from their credit cards into crypto. But yeah, it's being worked on. I am not as familiar with the on-ramp and off-ramps that are coming up, but there are definitely people that are trying to address this issue. And
yeah, there are a ton of people building banks that are crypto centric, and they're using virtual banking systems to do that. So you can buy and sell there, you can transfer out, you've got a non-custodial wallet, you can have a custodial option, you can have your debit card that takes from your bank account or takes from your crypto balances. So I think there's a number of solutions. I saw a solution, I'm not going to remember the name, but I saw a solution. Oh, I know what it was. I think it had to do with I think there was a new beta add-on feature for Gnosis that would allow treasuries to pay out in fiat and connect their bank accounts directly. So you would be on chain at that point regarding your balances and banking capabilities. So I think there's going to be a ton of options that come, and I think that centralized exchanges, along with banks starting to trade crypto. There was a permission given to a bunch of banks a couple of weeks ago to start offering crypto. I think, if your centralized exchange is only about being an on and off ramp because your trading fees are too high, and you're not playing in DeFi, you're probably going to see a significant drop in revenue in the coming years if you don't make changes.
Right. And with banks getting involved, do you what's the general feeling on regulations on DeFi? Do you think that could kill DeFi eventually, or it seems like regulations are inevitable? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I made the point earlier that I think we've missed the messaging, and that is that we should be talking about the fact that all financial systems should be decentralized and transparent, and I think that's the messaging we should take going forward. I'm going to take another U.S.-centric approach to this, and I think regulatory kind of gets spread from the U.S. out to a lot of countries, although I'm so impressed with what the U.K. is doing right now, to the point of thinking about maybe I need to move there. But I think that we as a community have a real problem because we have a really strong libertarian bent. And yes, libertarianism is why this system exists. But at the same time, our best opportunity to influence policy in the United States was in the primary elections this year. And the fact of the matter is that money, fear, and incentives are what drive politics. And if you want people advocating for you in the halls of power, wherever country you're in, you have to let them know that you can defeat them or you can help them win. And they are much more likely to be open to your education about the value and power of DeFi and crypto. And we as a community completely blew it in the United States this year because we didn't get off our asses and, excuse my language, and make our voices heard and concentrate on some of our enemies in Congress to instill fear incentives into politicians. So we're going to have to start building up our educational capabilities, our lobbying capabilities over the next 2 years. But ultimately, all of the power from lobbying and education comes from being a force to reckon with. And so I think we're going to have to see a much more significant change in how we approach lobbying in whatever country we're in and how we approach politicians in the future. And it can't be, oh, I don't want to get involved in that dirty politics, because it will get involved with you even if you don't. What's the line? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. That is definitely where we are at this point.
Yeah, I maybe for the first semi-disagreement of the day, I do have to say, whether it be people like Peter Van Valkenburg at Coin Center or Jake Chervinsky at Blockchain Association, I think we do have a few people that are advocating for the crypto space in a truly amazing, awe-inspiring way. Like what they do in DC is epic, in my opinion. But what I'd say is I don't know how most directly to try to influence lobbyists if they legally can't hold crypto, right? So there have to be alternative ways, but I would love to even see a system where that's not required. It's just honesty and real conversations. But that's me being a little too optimistic in terms of how things actually work and how things get done. Back to the original question, will regulation kill DeFi? I think that's impossible, right? Like, again, I too, Brad, have a U.S. centric view on things. From my understanding, I'm the only U.S. person kind of really contributing to the DAO in any meaningful way. So if they say DAO contributors cannot be Americans. That would put me in a sticky situation, but that won't prevent the protocol from operating online. That won't prevent other contributors from building, and whether it be forking or whether it be building new integrations, that's not going to stop. So the regulators should be keying in on events that happened this week. They should make sure that centralized exchanges and custodians are built and are solvent and are not rehypothecating. And I do truly believe that the players in the US have generally abided by those rules. The Coinbases, the BitGos, the Geminis, they're not at risk of blowing up, right? But, or at least my understanding. But the regulators trying to regulate DeFi, I think it just needs to be put on pause and have like a come to Satoshi moment where we sit down and actually talk about the benefits and potential negatives, because it could really kill innovation, at least in specific jurisdictions.
Yeah, and we have zero disagreement, Jared, on the brilliance of Coin Center or Jake. I constantly am telling people to contribute to Coin Center. They do brilliant work on our behalf. They're out there doing what they can do. But what Jake and what Coin Center can't do is engage in forming a super PAC or engage in the political side of things. That's not their role. Their role is to fight the fight as it comes to legislation and regulation and lawsuits against things. My real point is that ultimately, if they are going to be successful lobbying for what we really need from a legislative perspective, the people that they're talking to need to have some level of concern about the future of their political career.